Mike Barnicle and John Hallman are still with us, and joining the table, columnist for the Wall Street Journal, Peggy Noonan. Peggy, good to have you this morning.
Good morning.
And in Washington, we have Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst, Eugene Robinson.
Peggy, thanks for being with us. Peggy, in your latest column, you talk about a, quote, disaster cluster. One bad election after another. For Democrats, you trace Scott Brown's victory all the way through what happened on Tuesday. Is that an overread, or is this something the White House should really be worried about?
You know, I think James Carville gave very good advice yesterday when he wrote on his blog advice to Democrats. He said the only thing to do now is panic. I mean, there have been a series of elections in which the president's party lost, and I think at the heart of all of these contests, one way or another, there is simply a referendum going on about the president's leadership, and I think it is very problematic for the Democrats.
You know what was so fascinating, Gene Robinson, in this race was that you had a social conservative running in a liberal district, and, you know, people can say, oh, it's not really that. No, it is a liberal district. Anthony Weiner was one of the most progressive members when it came to health care, and he won the district easily. But you had a guy that was actually running as a social conservative, no apologies on God, gays, guns, et cetera, which I think nobody really voted on those issues. I think it shows just the level of contempt that a lot of Democrats and independents have for this White House and the direction of the country.
You don't think it had anything to do with Anthony Weiner?
It could have had something to do with Anthony Weiner.
Some?
It might have had something to do with Anthony Weiner, but this was a tough election for Democrats, absolutely, and shows, I think, that just how sour the mood is. Not just out there. We always talk about how things are out there, but that New York district is kind of in here, in the sense that it was a safe Democratic district for a long time, and it's not anymore. Now, does that mean that the thing to do is panic? I'm not sure that panic is the way I would characterize what I would think would be an appropriate response, but it certainly concentrates the mind and should concentrate, I think, the efforts of Democrats to get back on the right side of the voters.
You know, I think, Gene, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I think part of the story with the Weiner replacement race in New York is that the old Bill Clinton coalition, which had been the old Rudy Giuliani coalition, which was Catholics, Jews, the white middle class, they went for the Republican when previously, say in presidential elections, they'd gone for the Democrats.
Yeah.
The idea that that coalition, the Bill Clinton's coalition, may be breaking up now, it is a historic and really significant fact that I think we're starting to see.
But, you know, Peggy, predictions of that coalition's demise have been premature.
But it happened here.
Well, it happened here. It hasn't happened elsewhere. Look. If you want to look, for example, at the Democrats, what President Obama's ratings are with the Jewish community, for example, and they're clearly down, but his approval ratings are down across the board. They're not particularly down worse in the Jewish community than they are elsewhere. In the same, you recall all the predictions 4 years ago that he could never win the votes of white working class Americans, and in fact, Democrats did in 2008. So, again, that's. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. I'm just saying that we've gone out on this limb before, and it hasn't been true. And I think this is a pretty durable coalition. I think voters are in a bad mood.
What's so fascinating? Voters are in a bad mood. We had Steve Ratner come on talking about consumer confidence dropping after the debt deal debacle. What's been fascinating about New York 9 for me, and also you look at what happened in the Nevada special election, which wasn't a big shock, but the margin of victory was a big shock, is the fact that voters have said, if you read poll after poll, that there's a curse on both parties. Yep. They hated how both sides handled the debt ceiling debacle. And yet, despite the fact Republicans' approval are 12, 13% for running the House, it is the president, at the end of the day, that got punished in these two special elections, which I think at the end of the day may be predictive of what happens next year, all things being equal. On who are you going to punish? Are you going to punish the House for being reckless and irresponsible, or are you going to punish the President of the United States for being inept? And right now, it looks like it's the president that gets punished.
Well, we'll see. I mean, as you know, we had special elections just a few months ago up in
New York 26.
Up in New York 26, where it went the other way in a few months, and I don't know. But I will say this is a weird district. I mean, an unusual district, right? The district is 1/3 Jewish. It's the most Jewish congressional district in the country, and of those Jews, 1/3 are Orthodox Jews. The president's approval rating, contrary to what Gene said, with the Jewish community is horrible. He on inauguration day, he had an approval rating with Jews of 83%. Yesterday, Gallup came out with the poll. He's got an approval rating with Jews of 55%. That is a 28-point drop among Jewish Americans. And the 28-point drop in a district like this, where Ed Koch basically turned the race into a referendum on Obama's Israel policy.
Or in a state like Florida.
Yes, and the Democrat was an Orthodox Jew himself.
Correct.
I mean, it's all very complicated, but I think this is yet another sign that this coalition may not hold.
And I think, Joe, to your point, I mean, the main thing that race, if I were Obama, the main thing I'd be worried about is Florida and Pennsylvania, where close races, the Jewish vote is big enough in both those states to swing the election. And right now, I mean, I guess I say, he's down 28 points with Jews.
And I can tell you, Mike, the impact that this has on the board as you move forward. Again, if you take Florida off the board, and of course, the Obama team won't be doing that right now, but I remember going into 2004. We all remember Florida from 2000, as Tim talked about. Everybody thought 2004 was going to be close. I remember 10, 15 minutes into the count, and you remember I was heavily medicated. Yes, my back injury at the time.
That was your excuse then.
But anyway, wow. I can't believe I even remember this. But I remember calling my friend in Florida and asked how the numbers coming in Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach County, because Republicans usually lose those by 250,000. Bush kept it under 200,000. And I knew at 15 after that race was over, because Jewish voters in Broward County, enough of them felt comfortable with George W. Bush's position on Israel that they weren't reflexively going to vote for the Democrat. And I just, again, we're a long way off, but I will tell you what, if I were on the Obama team, I would not be counting on Florida in my electoral strategy. I'd be doubling down in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's been interesting listening to this for the past few minutes, because in my mind, if you're going to look at the state of politics today, you really have to look back nearly 80 years for a match to what's happening, I think. Because what's out there is this huge apprehension about the present, with people leaning toward fearful about the future. And you can talk about interest groups, you can talk about coalitions, but the shock that went through this country in the fall of 2008, there's no more pensions, remember. When people saw their 401s collapse, when they looked at their kids, 15, 16 in high school, college on the horizon, A, can we afford it? B, they're never going to have the shot in this country that I've had. Parents thinking that. And that kind of shock, that kind of cultural, social shock, is way above politics in terms of a threat to President Obama or any other incumbent.
It's the biggest political change in my life. The end of the assumption that the next generation would be better.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
It's above politics.
Well, can I ask a question?
Please.
Well, we need to get Gene's piece in, and then we would love to answer your question.
I want to hear your question. All right. But it's interesting as we look ahead at the next 15 months and whether or not anything will get done and whether or not this country can wait. 2012, the elections. Eugene asks the question, where are the compassionate conservatives? Perry, who is leading in the polls, wants to make the federal government inconsequential. He thinks Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and a monstrous lie. He doesn't much like Medicare either. But there was a fascinating moment in the debate when Perry defended Texas legislation that allows children of illegal immigrants to pay in-state tuition at state universities. We were clearly sending a message to young people, regardless of what the sound of their last name is, that we believe in you, Perry said.